Hello and welcome to the official reading of the Edge of Infinity Saga, Book 1, The Infinity Loop, written and narrated by Matthew E. Ogle, the author of the book. Chapter 1. Every day has been the same. Wake up, wander the area, eat, bathe, sleep, repeat. Michael has had this same routine every day of every cycle for the past 15 cycles, with Kent coming in every fifth cycle. He always asked the same questions he asked during their first session the day Michael was transferred in. How are you? Have you thought over what you did that day? Do you regret it? Do you think you would do it again? Why do you think you did all that? Every single time, without change. He may not have been an AIL, but he sure acted like one at times. AILs. One thing Michael struggled to understand at all was AILs. Artificial Intelligence Life Forms. The next generation of humanity in the dive. They seemed almost sentient. They could do anything a real person could, and yet never had been intentionally programmed in. They had existed almost as long as the dive had, but no one knew where they actually came from. Some theorized it was the government that had created them for the soldier program. Some theorized that they were the souls of those who had passed away in the dive being reborn purely as code. With the rise of AILs came also the rise of further technology in the dive, as they seemed to have an advanced understanding of code by nature, and were hired on by the government to create a fully immersive dive, which had eventually been used as humanity's last resort for survival when the solar system had run out of resources to support humanity even another 100 years. The dive had originally been a massive multiplayer online game, or MMO for short, that was accessed using virtual reality simulators. With the simulators, a person could leave the real world behind for the virtual one, but only for so long. The original simulators worked by connecting to your spinal cord to access your brain, sending exact sensation patterns up your nerves based on the in-game environment to trick your mind into thinking it's somewhere else, creating a full immersion system. The simulators could feed you as well, through use of a medical tube that was sent down your throat and into your stomach, where nutrient sludge was pumped directly to keep your body healthy. They had limited storage tanks on them that kept upwards of 1 year's worth of the nutrient sludge, and before the dive became the primary home of humanity, it was normal to spend a pretty penny to have those tanks refilled, though if you could afford one of those original simulators, the price of the nutrient sludge was practically chump change. News that humanity only has 100 years left easily caused mass panic when the total population of the solar system is some 400 trillion across 3 planets, and the dwarf planet of Pluto. So, the United Confederation of Planets set Project Sleep into action, where every citizen was placed in the dive to bring about the continuation of humanity, with little more than medical professionals and government officials allowed to go in and out at will to keep everything running smoothly, and that was a privilege that only a select few in those positions had. Then there were soldiers. Michael sat up on his bed, sighing and running his hand through his hair. The idea of becoming a soldier was tempting to anyone who wanted a way to leave the dive, wanted to see the real world, and it was the same desire that put him in his current position. In a digital world, hacking was inevitable, and people had found ways to hack themselves to become superhuman-like. Michael was one of those people. In order to become a soldier, however, someone needed to pass the war games, which had evolved from shooter and combat games without the use of hacks. Those who used hacks were labeled as war criminals and thrown into the Infinity Loop, the Supermax prison to end all Supermax prisons. He never intended to use his hacks. He was trying to do everything legitimately. All it took was a small mistake, and he wasn't left with any choice but to use them, and now he was here, for the next 640 cycles that remained of his sentence. Michael was shaken from his thoughts, as the world around him began to crumble. The cells were like your own self-contained world within the Infinity Loop, with some several million of them contained within thanks to the magic of the digital world. As he began to pay closer attention, the shakes became more frequent and only grew in intensity. When they finally came to a momentary pause, his cell began to alert him that the door was being opened and he needed to stay clear of the entrance unless he wanted to be electrocuted. What confused Michael, though, was that the only person allowed to enter his cell was Kent, who had visited only days ago when his 15th cycle ended. This time, though, something was different. The person who was revealed by the opening of his cell was not Kent. It was some woman. No, not a woman. Female, yes, but she was a bit shorter than Michael, with long blonde hair, and had facial features that suggested that she was in her late teens like him. Hello? Is anyone here? The girl called out into the air as she walked into Michael's cell. Michael confirmed his suspicions about her age by the sound of her voice. It still had that young but maturing ring to it that made Michael bet she was probably his age. As she walked further into the cell, Michael saw something else he hadn't before, or rather, someone. Behind the girl's right leg was another girl, except this one couldn't be much older than 5 at best. Michael stepped out of the shade provided by the tree in his front yard, startling both the girls. I'm sorry, we didn't know if someone was in here or not. Her legs trembled slightly, fear obvious in her stance as she faced him. We just needed to hide from the soldiers while the fighting goes on. He gave her a confused look. What fight? The uncanny sound of an explosion rang out from the doorway, shaking the entire virtual cell. What the hell is going on? The young girl, who was still hidden behind the older girl's legs, started to cry, the only emotion visible on her face being one of pure terror. The older girl reacted quickly, reaching down to pick her up. It's gonna be all right, Elise. I promise. Her words were shaky, fear being an evident lead in her tone as she tried to soothe the young girl, Elise. Michael was quick to take in the situation, looking around and noticing the cell still open. Normally the door would have shut automatically after whoever was entering made it more than 3 feet into the room, and wouldn't open again unless the person leaving had an authorization identifier badge, like the ones the guards or counselors have. That didn't seem to be the case here, though, as this girl clearly wasn't someone with the authority to enter and leave cells as she saw fit. Another explosion rang out from the hallway, quickly followed by the sound of gunshots and screams in the distance. The reality of the situation became clear to Michael. This was a prison break, and the systems were down. He looked the older girl in the eyes, determination and a devious smirk plastered across his face. If you want somewhere to hide, then feel free to stay in here, but I'm getting out. What? Her eyes went wide at his bold declaration. If you go out there, then the soldiers are too busy dealing with whatever attack is being raged on the Infinity Loop. Now you can either hide here and wait to be locked away and separated from her, he pointed straight at Elise, who was still crying in the older girl's arms, or you can come with me and get the hell out of here. Fear painted the girl's face as she listened to his proposal. But another explosion rang out in the distance, Elise crying louder in her arms. How do I know I can trust you? Fear plastered her face, desperation taking control of her desires, yet another explosion ringing out, though much closer this time. But you can trust the soldiers? She froze at his words, the reality now starting to sink in for her as well. Michael had left her with an ultimatum that couldn't have depicted a worse rock and hard place to be stuck between. She either had to trust him and take the risk of being caught while trying to escape, or stay put and be separated from Elise, who seemed to have a very clear and desperate attachment to her. What choice did she really have? Fine, but we go our separate ways once we're out. He grinned at her words. Deal. He reached his hand out for her to take, knowing that if she was going to make it out with him, they needed to run, and they needed to do it together. She grabbed his hand hesitantly, still unsure if she could even trust him, something Michael couldn't blame her for in the slightest. Once her hand was in his, though, he immediately began to pull her with him towards the cell door, wasting no time. He scanned the hallway quickly, seeing little more than the unconscious bodies of 2 soldiers, which was an off-putting sight to say the least. He shook the thought, leading the way into the hallway and quickly to the wall, heading fast as he could towards the exit he remembered being brought in from. Michael was in almost a full sprint, practically dragging the girl as they ran, disregarding her comments or pleas to slow down, knowing it would only get them caught. If we slow down, we give them a better chance to spot and bring us back in. The sound of an explosion rang out behind them, much closer than any of the ones before it. That, and we might get blown to smithereens if we stop. He dragged them around a corner tightly, seeing the door to the office ahead in the distance. There it is! He ran as fast as possible, nearly making it to the door when the grip on his hand was lost, and Michael turned around to see the girl collapsed on the floor, panting heavily, still holding the younger girl, Elise, in her arms. Can't breathe. watched as she pulled an item from her inventory, something small and L-shaped that she put to her mouth, sucking in a deep breath as she pressed the button on top of it. Shit, do you have asthma? The girl nodded quickly, taking in another puff from her inhaler as she panted her breaths out heavily. Sorry for pushing you so... Hey, what are they doing out of their cells? Michael froze, turning around to see 3 soldiers headed straight for them. End of chapter 1. Okay, just a quick note here, guys. What do you think? If you like the first chapter, if you think it's pretty cool, if you find it interesting at all, let me know down in the comments below. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the first chapter of my novel, The Edge of Infinity Saga, The Infinity Loop. As the title would suggest, I intend to make multiple books. This is just the first one. This is just the first chapter. It's still in progress, so just seeing where this goes. Yeah. Again, tell me your comments down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Peace out.